When I was out there injecting, we've done some of those subdivisions after they moisture condition it and they got the poly on it. They dig it out and they put it in there like you talk about in lifts and then spray water on it and build it back up.
Right.
Then they put that poly on it. Well, while they're putting that poly on it, what we see is they're running that dozer back and forth, spreading that dirt on it, and it tears that poly all to pieces.
Right.
So it just kind of defeats the whole purpose.
So how
of
much is it
down.
really trapping if it's got a bunch of holes in it?
Right. Right. That's what we saw.
No, I agree. Yeah.
Welcome again to Stabilize It Podcast. I'm Scott Warren with ProChemical Soil Stabilization. We have some special guests today with Altura Homes, Brian White and Steve Jesmer. Hi, Brian. Tell me a little bit about yourself and Altura Homes.
Well, I've been at Altura Homes for going on 9 years. Altura Homes is a family business, started 1979. Their biggest mission is always build a quality built home for an affordable price and the best customer service we can give. Building a home is one of the most stressful periods of anything that one person or family is going to do in their life next to getting married or having children. So it's a very, very stressful process. So we try to make the process as simple as possible. Building a house with anybody is going to be stressful, but we try to lean on the side of making it less stressful and with the best quality and keeping cost in mind.
Steve?
I've been with Altura for 8.5 years now, and I'm an area manager with them. Been the area manager for going on 4 years, and just enjoy working for them and dealing with Texas ProChem on a daily basis. So,
well, we appreciate that. We do. We try to do the best we can for stabilizing all your subdivisions that we're currently in. We've been working with Altura Homes for many, many years now, and we've always appreciate you guys. And y'all do build a quality home because we don't get to see the aftermath like you guys do because we're in there in the beginning, pre-construction. But there is some rare opportunities there where we get to come in and we get to talk to the homeowners because we have that one left in the neighborhood, and we've gotten a lot of positive reviews about Altura Homes. So it's been a pleasure for this many years to work with you guys. So how many subdivisions or projects do y'all do annually or over the last 10 years or so?
Well, currently, since I've been there in the past 9-10 years, we've completed around 25 subdivisions from start to finish. We currently have 8 under construction, physically building houses, and we have another 6 or 8 under development.
All right, guys. So what's going on in Altura Homes right now in your current subdivision?
as far as water injection goes, we have 2 tractors running in the Woodlands and Terrell. We just completed Heritage and Rockwall. We have Sulphur Springs that you're just about fixing to wrap up. We'll be moving over to Mallard, which is in Lone Oak, and on to Elizabeth, which is in Lone Oak. And I believe after that, you'll roll into Greenville for several more in Greenville.
Yeah, Greenville just keeps growing.
Yeah, Greenville keeps growing, and you'll pretty much be in those nonstop for at least the next year and a half.
So you guys are continuing to grow and building homes and developing land. So, Brian, what about you?
Well, what we do is on some of our new developments is here recently we've had Henley Johnson, which is a soil stabilization testing company, basically that gives us a test.
Yeah.
And at that point in time, they design a parameter for us in which how we need to design our foundations. They break it into quadrants, which helps us when we send it to our engineer. You know, we can basically tell him that, you know, anything in this quadrant 1 through 8 or whatever is you're going to need to design a foundation based off that. They give you the parameters for it, whether you're going to drill 8 feet down, 10 feet down. I saw one the other day that said 14. So, you know, he's going to basically tell you how deep you're going to shoot.
Yeah, and that changed in that particular subdivision too,
Sulphur
because
Springs.
it was 10 foot, and then they changed it just because the geology changes through that subdivision. So they made some of those lots 14 feet.
Yeah,
So,
and it can change from one side of the street to the other. But basically what that ensures us is the fact that he gives us those parameters. He takes into consideration that you're going to do those parameters, and then he designs our foundation based off that, as opposed to designing a foundation that you don't know where you truly need to be on injection. And in the long run, basically what it's doing is it's a cost savings deal. If you do chemical injections, but yet you have an engineer that's designing your foundations, and even though he knows that you're chemical injecting, he may still over-design that foundation, and in turn will cost you money. So we've narrowed it down now to we're getting our testing done soon enough.
Tell me a little bit about that testing, if you would, as far as, after the injection goes.
Yeah, so he'll come back out and he'll retest it, and he'll let us know, did we hit our criteria that we were shooting for.
Yeah.
You're not going to pass all of them. You're going to fail one out of, I don't know, maybe 50.
Yeah.
I don't even know if it's that high, but you're not going to always pass all of them. But we need to test them to verify that what he told you to do in his original parameter, and you did that's what it.
Yeah, and that's a crucial piece of chemical injection. Is the post-injection testing to make sure that we did everything that we could, because it's we're injecting in the ground. It's not something visually that we can look at, like a crooked board or something in our home that we can replace. We've been doing it for 30 years. And we look at those geotech reports that y'all provide us, and we look at all those Atterberg limits in there as well. And we do that, our timing, and not our dilution ratio, but our timing around those geotechnical reports. So we've got a really good idea of what we need to do for each zone that you guys talk about in each subdivision. But you're right, it changes so much in that particular subdivision that we may miss a few of them in there. So again, testing is
just
crucial
another verification that we're doing it the correct way, so that the engineer designs it the correct way, so that the return product is what we said it was going to be.
Yeah, and it all gets back to the end consumer, right? To the homeowner, because you want to make sure that they've got a quality foundation that you guys been doing for years and years and years.
Yeah, so we may tell our engineer to design our foundations for a 2.5, and we may go get a test, and you're shooting for a 1.
Right.
You may come back.
We're typically better than we engineer for.
Yeah.
So even though we're shooting for less beam depth, we're still getting better than is what required by the engineer.
Yeah.
Because we're already beating it by 1 or 2% anyway.
Yeah, 1 or 2%. Yeah, which is even better. Yeah, which is even better. So.
Which is just insurance for us and the home buyer moving it on. We offer a 6-year foundation structural warranty.
Okay.
So it's one of those deals. It's the front end chemical stabilization is what we find it to be a cheap insurance policy, if you want to say, based off the fact that we're guaranteeing this foundation for 6 years, and with that, we think it works well for us at a cost basis.
Right. Yeah, and we talk about that, when we were, talking to builders and land developers, about, we feel like it's just another alternative, but a better application versus moisture conditioning. But it's also very economical as well, for your home builders and custom builders and, all the way through. So it's always good to hear that feedback.
The good thing about Scott and his team is they come in there so early that they'll get out ahead of you by 10, 15, 20 lots. And by the time it's time to get started with bench lots, that ground is already dried up enough to get a tractor on it. So to me, that's been the biggest benefit is you get out there early enough and get a head start.
Yeah.
And then when it's time for us to go, that we can actually go, because it's hard to start. You can't necessarily bench a lot the day after you've water injected. It takes a week or two, sometimes 3 weeks.
It depends on, what time of year it is. If it's dead in the winter, as it may be a week before you get back on it.
Yeah.
But if it's 102 out it was last year, you can get back on it in 72 hours. So you're right.
So like this summer where we were needing some houses in the summertime and the ground was so dry that had we not let you get out ahead of us, it was taking, 3 to 4 days per lot. In the wintertime, it'd take a day and a half. And so
because that water had
now we
left
had
that
to
soil.
adjust how quick we came up to you, because we had to let you get far enough ahead, because the ground was so dry and so saturated, or so dry that you had to, once you were water injection was running 3-4 lots down.
You having those conversations.
Yeah, we've had to adjust, even had you injected. I mean, that's something we tried.
Because it was, sometimes it'll take, like you said, one pass, and then that particular subdivision, it was 2 passes of water, sometimes 3. Not on every lot, but some of them were.
Yeah, had we not had you do that, then obviously the next guys coming in on those lots, we're going to be able, when that ground gets so hard in this Northeast Texas soil that you can't drive a stake in it.
No.
You can't set forms. You can't trench it.
Right.
Then you end up having to spend more money for time, for watering again. Where the old days, that's what we did. We put water hoses out there and just soaked it,
And
soaked
just
it,
flooded
soaked
it, kind of
and hope
soaked
for,
it in.
and hope for the best.
Did you guys dig the beams out, do the plumbing and all?
It used to
put the
be we would
formworks up?
actually go out there and kind of bench it.
Yeah.
And we would just put sprinklers or water hoses and just saturate it for 3-4 days.
Yeah.
Then let it set in, and then send the guy to set forms. And obviously, if he can't drive a stake, then it's not wet enough.
Yeah.
So we had to move
Right.
on. He can't set it with a sledgehammer and a stake, and the next guy coming in can't trench it because it tears up the trenchers.
Right.
So then he's not going to come back. He's going to go somewhere else where he can work. So
Right.
getting you on the front end is
That's so good.
it's
to hear.
it's a lifesaver. And a lot of times, I think like Sulphur Springs, heck, you're going to be out of there before we even set the first form. So
Yeah, that's the goal.
we don't have to worry about
Yeah.
you're in our way or we're in your way.
Right.
And so that's
Right.
a lot of things that I think a lot of people don't realize is
Another added benefit.
is thinking far out and ahead that
Yeah.
getting you in and getting you out is beneficial.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, we've
That's
worked
good.
with a lot of municipalities and counties and tried to get them to allow us to come in sooner, like in Sulphur Springs. Some particular cities just will not allow you to go in to do your injecting until the new development is done, completed, and then they allow you to come in. But Terrell's been real good about it. Sulphur Springs is now allowing it. Greenville allows it. So we're able to get you in literally
awesome.
before development is even done. And like Steve said, in Sulphur Springs, you'll be out of there before the subdivision is completely done, and we won't have to. There won't be a callback for the first 55 or however many lots there are. You're done.
Right.
And it's a one-time deal
that's
where
it.
we go in there, we clean the lots, we do all of our final erosion control, and you're gone. Where you're coming in between lots, individual lots.
Yeah, we've done it both ways.
Yeah,
Yeah.
individual lots,
Yeah.
you got a little bit more. You've got to add.
And you're going to have
you
one
have
or
to
two.
add more
You're going to have
things.
what they call that, washout,
Concrete
clean out.
washout.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we'll come in and then, but that's only one or two.
But,
But doing it on
nowadays, we put the concrete wash up on the front of the street, and therefore you still
Oh.
inject it, so it doesn't even
Doesn't
affect.
even matter now.
Doesn't
then.
even matter anymore.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but what it does do is you get in there and get it all done. It's one transport.
Yes.
You take it up there one
Yes.
time, you drop your equipment,
Yeah.
and that guy
Yes.
goes there, and that's his place of work until he's done his last lot.
Yeah.
And then we
Which that's
pull out.
benefited both companies.
Oh, yeah.
It
Yeah,
you
really
don't have to
has.
keep moving
Yeah.
a tractor.
Yeah, I don't have to keep moving it, and then all that scheduling, and then you get into pricing and
Yeah.
diesel and how that goes up and
Oh,
down.
yeah.
So that's really had a
Yeah,
good
so it's
good effect on our relationship too.
it's worked
as
out
well.
good for us to be able to get in early as we can.
Yeah.
I've always thought that this process should truly fall underneath a developmental process. I mean,
I thought it did for a while.
years ago
does.
when they did the water and poly, that was
Yes.
part of the developer process. You'd go in during development, you'd water inject it, you'd poly it and backfill it with dirt, and that's what it was. But ever since it's phased away to that, I mean, it's still a soil stabilization process. So it's, to me, that's truly falls under development.
This is, in my opinion, is the correct way to do it, because we've seen failures doing it the other way,
With
where
water
it's
and
the
poly.
water and poly.
Yeah, and that's why
Not for us, but we've heard some
Yeah.
nightmares on
Yeah, to your point,
how
I mean,
that's
that's why
turned
it's
out.
gotten so, it's even spec'd into the geotech reports now, and it has been for a long time, but I see it more and more every year, because it's not that moisture conditioning doesn't work. It's just if you let it sit for, depending on whatever time that is, over a year, it goes back to what it was before.
Yeah.
And we've done a lot of subdivisions where they moisture condition it and put that poly on top of it, and they go back 2 years later and they do a boring on it because whatever reason that neighborhood sit or, the economics of it. And then it's right back to where it was. And so then we're called in and to chemically inject it. So you're right.
Yeah, so that brings up, I was at a previous employer, that's what it was, is we went in and had lots, and the lots were vacant for quite some time, so they needed to be redone. So we had water injection done back then. This was in 2009 and 2010. But we had a 6-month time.
Oh, okay.
Injected, and you had to be building on it within 6
Within
months.
6 months. You had some opportunities with water injection or moisture
Yeah,
conditioning.
yeah.
About
But
6
anytime
months.
after that 6 months, the rate in which that soil is going to start drying, you keep gaining more and more and more. So, but it basically got a 6 month span of get on it or
Wow.
have to do it again. So that's the good thing about this is once it's done, it's done.
All right, Steve, tell me more about moisture conditioning and the poly.
If a developer goes in and cuts the streets and cuts the pads or gets ready to cut the pads, they'll go in there and they'll use a water cannon basically and water down, and they're calling it moisturing the maintenance, moisture conditioning the soil. Then they'll take huge, I don't know the square footage or the yardage, but poly the whole subdivision minus the streets, and that's to lock in that moisture in the ground until it's time for construction.
Right. And then they put 6 inches or a foot of dirt
on top of that.
On top of that.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure they do some testing, but there's been cases where a developer's done that, but they actually missed 6 to 7 lots, completely missed them. And those came up obviously a couple of years later, and they all failed, and all the houses all had issues with foundations. Whereas the way you do it with the water injection with the chemical on individual lots, and the thing is that when Scott comes in and does it, when he's completed, we get a weekly report that says we did block B, lot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then we track it on our maps. It says it's done, and that verifies that we didn't miss any. So there's check and balances that way, because we can control it versus just buying raw subdivision from somebody that we're just taking their word for it. So this way, there's pretty much no question. We know Scott's been there. We know he's done a water injection. We get a weekly report. We signed off. We checked off. There's no way that one lot gets missed out of a whole subdivision. There's no gaps, right? Yeah. And then we're coming in behind you, usually within a month to 2 months to 3 months max. So, I mean, to me, that's really the only way to do it.
Yeah, to me, that would be ideal.
Yeah, that was the deal with the poly is the developer can come in, water cannon it, put his poly down, backfill it, build a pad. But if you don't build on it in a time frame, that's a problem. And that happened to me and a previous employer I worked with is that the subdivision basically went null and void once 2008 hit and the market dropped. And we came back in and moved in there in 2013. Well, none of those lots were prepared anymore. So every lot had to be re-injected. Then, like I said before, it had a 6-month span on it. If you didn't build on it in 6 months, they couldn't guarantee it, and you had to be back out there injecting it again. And we did test everyone. Yeah. After we did the injections, we had them all tested, and if the test came back within our parameters, we moved forward.
I didn't even know about that 6-month thing.
Yeah, they give you a time frame. It was a time frame.
I didn't even realize that.
And I guess they just figured that, that's the poly is supposed to trap the moisture, but it's still gonna evaporation, runoff down underground. I mean, you just don't know.
When I was out there injecting, we've done some of those subdivisions after they moisture condition it and they got the poly on it. They dig it out and they put it in there like you talk about in lifts and then spray water on it and build it back up.
Right.
Then they put that poly on it. Well, while they're putting that poly on it, what we see is they're running that dozer back and forth, spreading that dirt on it, and it tears that poly all to pieces. Right. So it just kind of defeats the whole purpose.
So how much is it really trapping if it's got a bunch of holes in it?
Right. That's what we saw.
No, I agree. Yeah.
Now, that may not be that way everywhere, but that's what we've seen.
Well, and then it's no different than that. I mean, I can remember plain as day, you go in there and you start benching a lot, cutting out for a driveway, and all of a sudden here comes all the poly flapping out. And you're like, well, I mean, that just kind of, once again, it defeats the purpose. If you're ripping up half of it while you're benching a lot in a driveway cut, it's no longer doing its job.
Right.
But chemical's the way to go. Chemical's the way to go on the front end, right down the street.
Yeah, it's such a more permanent solution than some other stabilizing methods. Yeah. So that's great. That's great to hear. So you mentioned earlier about the 10-year warranty and now a 6-year warranty. What changed in that?
My guess is that, foundation repair companies and structural warranty companies probably got together, and it might have been forced on by builders. Why do we have to pay for a 10-year warranty? And they, my guess is they got together and realized that the majority of your foundation failures are going to happen within the first 5 years. But
they changed the law. I don't know if I mentioned that or not. Yeah, they changed that law.
Yeah, Texas passed a law to allow it to where builders only have to offer a 6-year warranty on it. So Altura moved to the 6-year warranty. I believe the majority of the
Most every builder's gone.
builder has gone to it. There is a cost savings on it. There's going to be some builders out there, they're going to still say they got the 10-year warranty. Hey, I got a 10-year warranty. Everybody else went to 6. But
Sure.
paying for that additional warranty cost for the additional 4 years, is it really worth it? I mean, all the big box boys, Horton and all them boys, they went to a 6-year warranty.
Sure.
And it brings down the cost of that warranty at the purchase. And then, like I said, the majority of it's not happening from 6 to 10. It's
you got to try to reduce costs in this, in this economical,
that directly
challenge.
goes to the home buyer.
And there is some responsibility to the homeowner to maintain at least around the perimeter of the foundation, with guttering and some other things too.
That's the other thing about those structural warranties are that they're transferable.
Yeah.
From the original owner to the second one. So kind of going back to that, if it's transferable, one of our homes that does have water injected and chemical has been done, I think it helps the resale value.
Right.
Because that's just something that...
Is that through another warranty company?
Yeah, there's a third-party structural warranty company that we pay for that covers that warranty.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like he said, what they found out was anything
but it's got to
that
meet
was
that
happening
criteria that you talked about.
Right.
Y'all have elected to chemically inject it, and then to obviously do the testing and all that and all that criteria, and then you get the 2 to 6. Because as you mentioned earlier, most of your foundations are moving within, you stated, first 5 years. Yeah. If there's any problems,
the initial movement's going to come in the first year. Really, once it goes through one full calendar year, that's where most of your movement's going to come through.
Yeah.
But once it's settled in, it's usually pretty good.
Yeah.
Good.
And then a lot of this depending on the house location, the subdivision, previous infrastructure that went on in before, or maybe old infrastructure. I don't know if you remember in Greenville that time we went out there and that one street where multiple houses on each side. Yeah.
Yes.
So we had a lot of movement on a couple of those houses. And if you remember, we went out and we stuck the stake in the corner and ran a string line over to the nail at the brick to get our level line, and then you came out and hand injected, and then we went back and checked to see how it adjusted it, and it was actually kind of neat to watch because you just basically walked around the house and did hand injections, took you an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Yeah, we wasn't out there long.
And you didn't even know you were there. I mean, that's the cool thing about being able to do hand injections is if we do have an issue where we feel like maybe, hey, this was the back right corner of that most recent one I remember, is, hey, the back right corner is sagging a little bit. Let's go back and we'll do 3/4 up one side and we'll do 3/4 across the back, and we'll see if we can't get it to swell back up a little bit. And then once we get it there, the chemical's going to stabilize it. And if all works right.
Yeah, you're just trying to get it to stabilize
it's
where
not
it's moving.
Yeah, it's not going to move again. So,
so it lifted a little bit, then it settled back down just a hair, and then it stopped at that chemical, or stabilizer stopped it. So,
but that's the cool thing about being able to hand inject. I mean, you don't have to physically get in with a tractor. I mean, you can pull it out, walk around the house, and you can get all the way around the house, you know. So that's a pretty neat aspect that you have that you can do is you can go back in and we use that kind of like a little guinea pig deal over there. We did tested it.
I remember me and you talking
about
it.
Run the string line and the level, and I mean it was kind of neat to watch what it did over a month or two.
We simplified it. Yeah, we cut a lot of cost out of that, and it worked.
Yes,
so
it did. So it's a pretty neat deal. Neat deal.
So Brian, when you start a new subdivision or a new project, how do we align in that as well? How do we help you with that project?
Yeah, so depending on the development, if it's one of the developments that we've been able to get in right on the front end prior to development being finished and done, but basically when we do what we call releasing a house, Kelly, ProChem, she's on an email. And she checks to verify if the lot has been injected. She'll send over an injection date. We have a system now that we can there is actually a spot in our system that says date injected. We actually go in there and plug that date in. But basically, even if it's not a lot that we've already injected, so we send it over to Kelly. And most of the time, I'd have to say we've got an injector in that subdivision. If not, we'll have to move it. And then she comes in and does a process, chemical injection. And then that allows us that once that's done, that whole time, though, we're going through the permitting process normally. So if all works out right, by the time she's done with the injection process, we have our permit, and there's not really any delay. Very rarely do we ask her to move from one street to another street because of the way we like to build houses going down the street. But the process is pretty simple. We start a house. Kelly confirms whether it's been done or not. If not, she moves in. We get a date back. It's logged. We have a big boardroom that has all of our subdivisions on it.
The board,
we go in and put a black dot on it, and it doesn't matter who you are. If you know that black dot means injections, and that means the lot's been done. I mean, it's a no-brainer.
It takes all the guesswork out of
it does.
that.
Someone
You
could
just walk in, you got that visual right there.
And when our office goes to start releasing houses, there's a lot of times our CFO will go in there and decide he wants to start houses, and the first thing he's going to look for is which ones we started are injected, because that tells him that I can get going today,
right?
And he doesn't have to wait for the injection process, moving equipment in. So it works out good. We've formed a good team.
Yeah, it sounds like y'all minimized a lot of delays
Yes.
and ramped up your production of doing those best practices. So
Well, what it's done is it's just made us be able to start sooner.
yeah,
As opposed to in the years in the past where we weren't getting in on the front end and getting as many lots injected. It'd be okay. We're going to start these 3 houses, and if they've not been injected, well, that's a whole process. It could be a week of transport time before y'all can get one there, and it could be a week of injection time. And I understand we're going through permit process all at the same time, but some cities are 3 days on a permit.
yeah,
So I may be ready to build, but so it's just allowed us to literally go
that's good to hear.
instead of slowly go.
Right.
So
Yeah, you get rid of the delays.
yeah,
So,
we do.
so obviously we've had a long-term business relationship, and we go back almost a decade.
Right.
And I know that my company has grown with y'all's, especially in the process that you were just talking
Right.
about that. Tell me how we've improved to help you again, because when we used to start, we do that 2 or 3, or we do those 4, and we move back
Right.
out, and then we'd go back into another subdivision. Tell me a little bit more about that, if you would.
Well, really, you guys' organization is pretty much on par. I mean, we call you, you answer, you show up on time, you leave when you say you're going to leave to
Yes.
move on to the next job.
Right.
And we get the weekly reports, when it's done, what's not done. And frankly, when I drive through and if I see anything that says, hey, why is this guy asleep on the tractor? Then, you'll have a good answer for me why that is. But
it's silence. It's just a little bit of silence there.
And
I get a little pissed.
We had to bring those things up. And so, but he's always quick to respond and, fix an issue. I mean, if we have a hose connecting that is leaking water that, is going to draw attention from either a homeowner or a city official because it's leaking more water, because everybody's conscious about water now.
Sure.
But Scott, your guys are within an hour. There's usually someone there to be able to repair, take a fire hydrant meter apart. You guys are great with the city as far as, hey, you guys pick them up, you install them, you coordinate the backflow test on them, and us as a builder do nothing. We just tell you where to go and when can you be there, and you're kind of one of the silent ones we don't really have to deal with.
I know. I get a lot of that.
So it's kind of like, I mean, that's
That's
the
a good
trait
thing,
that you
though.
don't want
That's
to
a
hear.
good trait.
Yeah. If your name is called on up and down the hallway every day, it's never a good thing. So
Right.
when we don't hear your name, that's always a positive. So
Right.
it's an easy deal, and there's things that Scott's done for us that is well out of his job description to do, and he's always been there to help. If he can't do it himself, he'll come up with a solution of how to do it.
Right.
So it's always when in doubt, call Scott. If he doesn't know, he'll figure out a way to get it done.
5 years ago, we hired our VP of Sales, Kelly Bell, which really, really helped in our organization because, you had us out in the field and we were doing all those other things. So
Right,
we've
you
grown
couldn't do
and
the
gotten a
inside.
VP of Sales,
Yeah.
and she's really helped that process out, between two offices of putting that black dot on that
Right.
board and
Yeah.
making sure that there's no delays and all of that. So
And
that's
when
so
in,
good
and
to
when in
hear.
doubt, if I look at the board and I have to look at it and I'm not sure I see the black dot or not, I'll pick up the phone, call Kelly. Hey, will you run this address for me in lot and block? And will you just double check one more time? And
Right.
she'll come back within minutes. Yep, it's done. We did it on this date. And then just the dot got covered up by another dot or another pin. But when in doubt, we just call back and say, hey, we're going to start this lot. I think it's a dot, but let's just make sure. And we usually get an answer within minutes. So it's not like a day or weeks. It's
that's our rule. You got to call back before the sun goes down.
Yeah. And we give her a plat map at the beginning of each new subdivision. So she kind of does what we do. She highlights hers or does something on her end. She always has that map with her, basically, or at least able to get to it quickly. And then we have our map at the board. And it's pretty easy, like you said.
Yeah, no, she's done a fantastic job with working with y'all and vice versa. And it's allowed, other parts of my team, including myself, to get out in the field and, make sure that we're doing things the way that, we've always done them and make sure that we're, with the flux of new hires coming in to make sure they're trained properly as well. So that's been a good growth.
Right. Even your field guys in the field that we may not know them on first name basis, but if we have a question or they have a problem, they'll wave us down or they'll get a hold of somebody, which is good. And other than just continuing on something they're not sure is right or wrong, they're good about stopping us. Hey, I got a question. Is this the right? Are these corners flagged right? Because obviously you got to be on the right.
For sure.
He likes his flags. He likes his flags.
He likes his flags.
Yes, he likes his flags. So
Scott, hey, these flags been out here a while. Can you remove them? You got
250 flags out here. I need you to pick up before the mowers get here.
Yeah.
So it's nice to have because I can drive by and see the flags and see your injection pattern and look at that and say, well, no, you know what? That's too far to the right, or that's too far to the left.
And that's one of the reasons why we do them.
On your acreage lots, the house is not always set up dead center, so it's easy for me to drive through a subdivision and say, Scott, just by looking at your flags and where your guys injecting that, I think you need to be moved over to the left about at least 25 feet because that house obviously is not going to fit that way. Right. And it's real easy for me to tell just by driving by.
I'm glad you mentioned that
stop
because
and say, hey.
We did that on purpose for our guys too. And then that way, when we pull up to right before we break that equipment down and move it to the next lot or the next project, we're up on top of that pad and making sure that injection is right where those flags should be. So at a benefit, you're even look at those. You're taking that house flat and looking at.
I look at it generically how the house is going to sit on that lot, even though the house may not even been picked yet. And then once we get our house corners marked, I'll drive again before we bench it and cover up your ruts. And I can look at those two flags are our flags compared to your injection site and say, you know what, we missed this one by, this happened before. Hey, we've missed this one. No fault of yours. Just
we'd rather catch it that way so we don't have any problems. This house wasn't going to
fit on that lot this way. Therefore, we need you to come back and do 20 more feet on the right.
And that's rare that it happens, but it has happened.
Yeah, once or twice a year we come back and say, man, we missed it by 20 feet because the house just wasn't going to set up that way. And Scott's been there. I mean, as hard as it is to get back there with that equipment, he's usually on it within a few days, some way or another. It doesn't slow you up.
I was going to just say one thing that we have learned because we've been doing this now for so long as a team is like I'll get with Kelly on the front end of a subdivision and say, all right, you're about to move in here, and her and I will look at the plans, plan sizes, and for example, in Greenville Creekview, okay, our widest house is 85 feet wide. Okay, so I always tell her, okay, you're gonna inject every lot out here a minimum of 85 feet, and then you're 5 foot extended over, and then I go back and go, okay, look, the deepest house is 64. Okay, so now you're gonna have to inject, let's do 74. And what that allows us to do is that means as long as we're on the pad,
you can move
and we don't add a house that's not been injected for.
Yeah.
She always injects every lot to fit the largest house we have.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what you put on it, as long as your footprint that you've injected will hold your biggest house.
Yeah, because prior to that, several years ago, we weren't doing that. Mm-hmm. We were just taking the house foundation and then doing that square footage and then the linear foot around it, and then trying to figure out where it was in the middle. Mm-hmm. And then it always happens on that corner lot.
Yeah,
It's always a
cul-de-sacs,
cul-de-sac or
cul-de-sacs
something,
and corners. The house
you
is
know.
always further
And
back.
I remember telling Kelly, man, we were always doing this and that, and then you guys came up with that. So that's
So it made it basically not every house is going to be needed, or not every pad is going to be needed for the biggest house. So
Sure.
there's going to be some lots that we may
Yeah.
have the smallest house on, but we've injected for the largest. But that's fine. But that allows us to know that as we're building down the street, we're not dictated to what house I can build on that lot because of what we
Right.
injected. If we injected for the largest house, you can build the largest house on every lot. It just makes
That's
it
awesome.
easier.
Yeah.
This means you did a little bit more than you needed to, but that's okay. On another level, customers or future people looking to do water injection chemical, or even if it's a one-off, build your own custom home somewhere, that's highly recommended because I personally had, you've done 2 for me, personal houses. And my personal experience with how the outcome came on those 2 foundations versus a foundation of homes I've lived in. But prior to that, the cosmetic issues that I normally would see in a normal house have gone away. I rarely had to touch up caulking, cracks, just movement. I'm a believer. I did the first one in 2011, and that house never had an issue. For I think 7 years I was in, never moved, never a door, never had to turn a screw. And for a homeowner, that's a big thing. If they're not really handy, the movement of the home, not being able to control it without moving, is a big deal. So, like I said, I'm on my second one that you've done for me, and again, I have yet to adjust.
I keep asking about once a year.
Yeah, you
I'll
asked me
you,
about my
how's the
shop.
house?
And he even did my. Actually, he did my house and he did my shop.
Yeah.
And he didn't have to do the shop because it was, it was a metal building and 1,000 square foot building. And, but again, the building hasn't moved, the shop door shut. I mean, so doing both of those was just, it's kind of a no brainer. It's like, I'll sleep better at night knowing it's done. And obviously my door's shut and I don't have a happy wife, happy life.
Oh, that's so good to hear. And,
so it's just one of those deals that if you've done it and you've had a home that's been water injected with chemical and everything is stabilized versus a home that was built in the 80s or the 90s or the 70s. I mean, I can remember, this is an old story, but thinking about how we do it nowadays, I used to watch my father go out there in the summertime, and he used to, one, he hand watered the roof to cool the roof down. And 2, he watered the foundation at the base, and he was pouring water where the cracks where the soil moved back. Well, nowadays that's a no-no. I mean, nowadays that is, you do not do that. You do not pour water down the edge of the foundation between when it draws back and shrinks back at 110 degrees.
yeah.
But water injection, solves a lot of that problem where you're not having to drag hoses and do that. But I tell my father all the time, I said, you know how many houses you messed up? You had no idea and you thought you were doing the right thing. Now, cooling the roof off,
cooling the roof off.
That was kind of pretty smart
My
back.
dad did
this is in the 80s. This is in the 80s.
Well, I
this
remember
is
my
in
dad doing some of that.
Yeah, this is in the 80s, but now I tell him, Dad, you really weren't doing that, and you shouldn't have been doing that. So
I'm so glad to hear that too, as well, from a business standpoint and a personal relationship too. But we've got a lot of customers that, we don't do any marketing with, and they've been with us for 15, 20 years that we just keep doing chemical injection for. They call me and they'll even call me and say, Scott, I'm not sure if this one needs injected.
No news is good news.
Yeah. And I said, well, it's right on the line. Well, we want to go ahead and do it. We want to go ahead and do it. So it's so good to hear the other side of that. Well, thank you guys for coming
you're welcome.
in.
Yeah.
I really,
Thanks for
really
having
do
us out.
appreciate it.
Thanks for having us out.
Been good.